Over the years, various Iranian filmmakers have risen, each with their own set of stylistic and thematic preferences. Some leaned in on the practices of classic Hollywood, such as film Farsi. Some found inspiration within the depths of Italian neorealism, such as Iranian New Wave. Regardless of their stylistic origins, as time passed, Iranian cinema took its own form and developed its own personality. Certain practices became commonplace, and various uniquely Iranian genres developed. The cinema of sacred defense arose in response to the Iran-Iraq War, demonstrating a uniquely Shia perspective on the brutal and bloody war. In response to Islamic censorship, a rebellious cinema also formed in direct opposition to the theocratic government in place. Among these various genres, in between them all, was a set of stylistic choices that stand apart from the others. These films seemed to step away from their characters and decided to let the audience come to their own conclusions. As opposed to telling the viewers what to think, these films focused on the aspect of observing, often through a single, unbiased lens. This practice led to a selection of commonly repeated stylistic and narrative techniques that in part led to the creation of what could be argued as its own miniature genre within the Iranian film. A genre centered on the act of observing. Moving forward, I will focus on three films that I believe slot into this genre of observational film: Bahman Gobadi's Time for Drunken Horses, Kiarostami's Where is the Friend's House, and Sohrab Shahid Salih's A Simple Event. These films will be analyzed so that I can explain some of the fundamental elements that make up the genre of observational film. The first and arguably most important element is the presence of a single, non-judgmental protagonist whom the film follows. This protagonist is often a child, due to the perception that children do not have the necessary life experiences to make immediate judgments about the nature of a person or situation. They instead see events and people as they are displayed to them, nothing more. While the child protagonist is a key element of observational film, their impact would be minimal if they were not consistently contrasted with their older counterparts. Within observational cinema, adults are prevalent with their own motivations, desires, and tendencies to judge, often crafting them into surrogate antagonists in the genre devoid of a singular villain. Generally, the adults within these films are either complacent and unsympathetic to the protagonist's woes, or are a source of them. For example, the protagonist's parents in all three films refuse to help their children achieve their goals. This is either because they're dead, as in A Time for Drunken Horses, busy, as in A Simple Event, or opposed to the protagonist's goals, as in Where is the Friend's House. In all three films, the protagonist is forced to search for a solution on their own when the adults in their life fail to support them. In commenting on the characters within his films, Bahman Gobadi reveals some insights on why exactly this might be the case. He says, "I think that the adults are far more damaged than the children, and if that comes through, well, that is the part of reality as well. They are thinking about how to put food on the table. They are extremely poor. They have families to take care of, and no means to take care of them. Their concern is not with the orphans. They can think only about surviving from day to day. They've had a lifetime of dealing with a harsh reality, and they have no hope. They treat the kids that way because they have reached a point in their lives where nothing else matters but survival." While this interview focuses specifically on Gobadi's filmmaking, his insights are relevant to all three films I am covering. In A Simple Event, the protagonist's father is struggling to make ends meet and seemingly ignores his child throughout the film. Even when the child's mother dies, the father only seems to sink deeper into his subconscious. Within Where is the Friend's House, the presence of poverty is not as overwhelming, but certainly informs the actions of the protagonist's parents, who seems unwilling to listen to any form of reason he gives them. And of course, as Gobadi demonstrates within A Time for Drunken Horses, the consistent pressure of poverty forces the adults to make decisions adverse to the desires of the children, leading the protagonist down the eventual narrative trail that the film decides to take. While the characters help craft the narrative messages within observational film, its cinematography acts to solidify its style. Throughout observational films, much effort seems to be taken to prevent the film from applying judgment to the events displayed. Observational films are typically described to be shot with a documentary style of cinematography. I believe this is key to understanding the reasoning behind the framing of most shots seen within these films. A good example is how all three films I'm analyzing refuse the use of high-angle or low-angle shots, instead always referencing the characters from eye level, so that they are placed on equal standing with each other. Long shots are used frequently to display events in their entirety, and cameras often pan instead of cutting to allow for shots to continue past the duration typically within continuity editing. In his academic paper, Discovering Form, Inferring Meaning, Nichols reveals some insights that help justify the prevalence of documentary-adjacent cinematography. He says, in many of these films, questions of the social order play a determining part, and yet, potential conflicts that such issues present are not given the dramatic intensity found in our mainstream cinema. The shooting style and arrangement of scenes contribute significantly to this result. The moral and emotional center of the films lies elsewhere. Iranian observational cinema does not desire to comment on the circumstances that the characters find themselves in, but instead desires to focus the audience onto the characters themselves, allowing the viewers to come to their own conclusions without the meddling tricks and techniques seen commonly in mainstream film to shape the viewer's perception. Another consistent element of Iranian observational cinema is the prevalence of open-ended conclusions. All three films being analyzed demonstrate an open-ended conclusion to at least a small degree. In each of the films, the protagonist fails to achieve their ultimate goal, while in some of the films, the conflict is resolved, like when the schoolboy forges his classmate's homework in Where's the Friend's House. Regardless, these films end in the middle of their protagonist's journey. They take a limited, short-term perspective on a character's life and then end, often abruptly. Time for Drunken Horses ends with the protagonist carrying his crippled brother towards the Iraq border after his caravan was attacked by bandits. We never see if he makes it, nor if he's able to sell his uncle's donkey for enough money to afford his brother's medical operation. This is intentional, as these films are not made to propel a hero nor attack a villain. They showcase a regular, flawed human who makes mistakes. These films are not made to capture the protagonist's triumph, but instead reveal the intricacies of their journey so that we may come to a better understanding of the challenges they face. While the three films I am covering have many similarities that cement them into the genre of Iranian observational film, I would be remiss to ignore their cultural and stylistic intricacies. Sohrab Shalid's A Simple Event released before the Islamic Revolution, making it the oldest of the three films. It contains many elements of the Iranian New Wave cinema, and the director lived in exile from Iran. In Kumar Salih's academic paper, Not Another Exilic Movie, great effort is put into separating Sohrab from the rest of the Iranian filmmaking industry. He states, Salih should be read like his idol Chekhov, as socially conscious artist whose oeuvre represents a committed engagement with the everyday, the subtle, reoccurring activities that reveal our inner lives and constitute our patterns of being. Being exiled, Shalid found himself living and producing films in various nationalities and languages that would inevitably shape his worldview. In watching his films, it can be hard to deny the influence of Soviet and German style and form. Bahman Gobadi's Time for Drunken Horses is the most modern of the three films and concerns himself greatly with the struggle and culture of the Kurds found in northern Iran on the border to Iraq. A common thread within his films is the desire to help represent the Kurds, his people, so that they can be seen and understood by people around the world. Kiarostami's Where's the Friend's House takes place in a more traditional rural Iran than Time for Drunken Horses, and serves as a social commentary on both the traditionalists and modernists within Iran. At a first glance, it can be easy to read the film at face value. Academics theorize about a deeper meaning underneath the surface. In his paper, Doors, Windows, and the Notebook of Solidarity, Rethinking Abbas Kiarostami's Where's the Friend's House, Farshad Zahedi states that the film should be considered as a practice of the Persian concept of rindi, a social tactic of everyday life for negotiating with despotic authorities, and an effective mechanism of self-defense for Ahmad, as it was for many other of Kiarostami's characters. Time for Drunken Horses, Where's the Friend's House, and A Simple Event, while all uniquely different in their own way, stand together to highlight what it means to represent Iranian observational cinema. They each showcase a cutout of the life of an adolescent, unjudging protagonist who struggles against the apathy of an older generation, only to inevitably fail at their goals in an open conclusion that leaves the audience asking themselves the purpose of the journey before them. These films highlight the characters above the world around them and use cinematography to remain as unbiased as possible, allowing the audience to make their own conclusions.